Hey, welcome all. Welcome back to another episode of Boardroom to Backend, where we dive deep into the minds of technology leaders shaping the future of business and healthcare here. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with someone who has been at the forefront of IT strategy and healthcare transformation, Nayan Patel. Nayan is the CIO at Upson Regional Medical Center and Managing Director at Avis Advisors, bringing decades of expertise in IT strategy, governance, M&A, and service management operations. His leadership spans of the most prominent healthcare institutions, including U.S. Heart and Vascular, New Desic, Baptist Health, Baylor Scott and White Health, and many more. With over 25 years of experience, Nayan has successfully led large scale digital transformation initiatives, modernized IT infrastructure, and driven M&A integrations, all while ensuring the resilience and reliability of IT operations in critical healthcare environments. He played a pivotal role in supporting COVID 19 response efforts, enhancing the electronic health records, and implementing ITIL based service management to elevate clinical and business operations. Beyond his executive roles, Nayan is deeply committed to mentorship and education. As a faculty member at Chime University and an active contributor to SMU's IT and cybersecurity advisor boards, he continuously shapes the next generation of tech leaders. Today, we will explore Nayan's unique leadership philosophy, his approach to using technology to build trust, and his vision for the future of healthcare IT. Let's get started. Welcome, Nayan. It's my pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you. So let's begin by understanding a little more about your journey and what actually initially sparked your passion for IT, and when did you actually transform into more of the healthcare side of the technology?
Yeah, so I think in terms of just where I got interested in technology was a very long time ago, probably when I was in high school, and I inherited a car with just one AM radio in it. And so one speaker and one AM radio, and that was it. So, I had the pleasure of taking that apart and installing speakers, wiring it all, putting together, the first cassette player in there. And so just that technology piece is something that spawned me into my career of always wanting to be involved in something around technology. But I got into healthcare about 20 years ago. My first 10 years was in semiconductors. I have an electrical engineering background, so I was in the semiconductor space and then telecom, just doing a lot of different things in a product management role after I moved out of the design role. And I was fortunate enough to be recruited by somebody at Baylor Scott and White that got me into Baylor, and I helped build out their interface diagrams and really understanding where all the data flowed within a healthcare hospital environment. I was fortunate enough to leverage that and then run their IT governance and PMO, and eventually was running two of their heart hospitals from an IT perspective within the Baylor system. So I was with Baylor for about 12 years, and that's kind of how I got into healthcare. And one of the organizations, as you mentioned, that I try to contribute to is HIMSS, Healthcare Information Management Systems Society. I volunteered for there and eventually was active in the local chapter here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And that really actually helped me learn about the industry at a much broader level and helped me grow, becoming into a senior executive in that space.
Awesome, awesome. Anything that comes to your mind that was, you know, in early part of your career, kind of shaped your overall thinking, or like um, anybody as a mentor who actually shaped your thoughts during that period?
Oh yeah, I definitely give a lot of credit to my prior CIO when I was at Baylor, David Muntz. He definitely shared with me many things. One of them was also how you need to make time for yourself every day or every week, 5, 10% to do something other than your job. And that doesn't mean you're not you're doing something unproductive. You're doing some productive things, but it's building relationships, learning about something else, contributing in a different way, taking on volunteer projects within an organization, or just doing different types of work to broaden your career and mindset so that you're always with and I tell people that's what they're very good.
Got it. So, and you have always described yourself as an agent of change, right? What does it mean for you on a day-to-day leadership, and like how do you navigate any resistance that might come across your way when people are, um, you know, encountering this change in healthcare IT, especially?
I think the key thing with any time you're in a leadership role is your job is to be an influencer. So you have to really understand the other side and what their position is on whatever you're presenting, whether it's a new solution that is just going to operationally change things and the impact it has on, and in our case, clinical workflows and the nursing and physician impact it has, and on the operational side from the COO and CFO, what kind of cost is this going to entail? You have to put yourself in their shoes and just really spend more time interviewing them and understanding their side and their impact and build that relationship. So I think the thing that I really focus on is relationship building from the get-go. Because if you have a good relationship, you can work through whatever you're trying to achieve together. And that relationship building takes time. So every new organization that I've been a part of, the first several weeks, that's my focus area. Just kind of getting out, meeting people, trying to understand what area and what environment that I've stepped into.
Got it. Got it. And I mean, that's very, very crucial, especially when it comes to technology and managing both the technology and the human side is so much important for being a successful change agent, right? Because the business impact wouldn't be realized without uh, getting the buy-in from all the people who are going to kind of get impacted with the technology change that you are trying to kind of drive. So now shifting more towards you have in this 25 years you have seen a lot of technology changes, a lot of technology cycles that have come your way, right? How have you actually uh, treated that? How have you anticipated some of the technology changes that are coming in, and how do you actually keep yourself ahead of the game and make sure that like wherever you are there, you are able to kind of recognize the technologies that you can bring into your organization and make the right choice?
Well, there's definitely no one right way to do everything, but a lot of it is about staying informed. So certainly I've got plenty of newsletters that I used to sign up for, and I've had to get off of a few of them because it was too much reading at some point, right?
Hmm.
Books are certainly helpful, but newsletters and seeing what's happening, whether it's daily updates or weekly updates, that's one thing that I try to pay attention to and at least quickly read something so you see the trends and what's happening. The other thing is just being active in, conferences. And when you get out there, it's not just, hey, let me look and walk around and see what these new products are. You have to engage yourself, ask the questions, learn about something, even if it's something you don't think you need. You should just learn about all these different solutions because they may or may not be something that you need now, but you might need it in the future. And so there's not a good way to say, okay, I'm going to stay on top of everything, but you need to keep getting, a little bit of knowledge on anything that's coming around. And it takes time. That's one of the hardest things, I think, when you get into these leadership roles. You're having to educate yourself on so many different topics at a very broad level, and you feel bad because sometimes you're like, I don't know enough detail if I can speak to it effectively, right? You want to be able to talk to everything like you're really good at it, but it's hard to because there's so many things to understand. So that is critical to get out there, talk to people, even doing, these type of podcasts. We learn from each other just having this conversation. You end up recognizing what you don't know sometimes. and then
Right.
I'll go back and say, okay, you asked me a question that I need to go learn something more about.
Got it. Awesome. And you have been very passionate about data, and you did mention that, right? Yeah. You say keep improving lives with data and the golden rule. Can you unlock that philosophy for us and how it applies in the healthcare IT? Um,
Yeah, so Edward Deming has one of those quotes, in God we trust, all others bring data, right? That's one of my favorite quotes, and I usually have that as a backdrop on one of my virtual backgrounds.
yeah.
But it's something that, we have all kinds of data today, but which data is going to be the most valuable? And so you really need to find a way to make some decisions. And so you take that data, package it in a way that it can be turned into information, right? And then putting that into as I talked earlier about, an influential conversation with your leadership. It's not an easy thing to do, right? But it's also, the golden rule to me is, no matter what philosophy or religion you believe in, it's sort of the be kind first and then try to get to where you want to go and present. Okay, and if they don't come back to you with the answer that you're hoping for, okay, understand their point of view, see if there's something else that can be iterated to kind of get where you want to go. And then sometimes you just have to realize, hey, this is not the right fit. Let's focus on another problem, because there's always going to be opportunities to improve some things. But it's, again, do the research up front, get the data as you can, spend time simplifying the data to tell the right story. Because ultimately, it's all about telling the right story so that a good decision can be made that you want to happen.
Got it. And I'm sure, like, see, when you have such a long career, there are always challenges, and not every time you are met with success. There would be times where there are setbacks on the initiatives that you might have taken. Can you actually recollect or share one or two instances where probably it did not go the way you envisioned that it should be?
Yeah, I think one conversation I actually had with the CIO, or sorry, a CEO, was we were trying to do a cloud transformation effort, and I, really wanted to head down this path. Part of it was to save money. It was actually going to help the organization move in the right direction, but we didn't present the information the best way we could have. And some of it had to do with how I had the information ready to go, but I think I shared it in advance. And instead of presenting the data, the information was shared in advance. And the problem with doing something like that sometimes is they don't understand the full story of walking through the content that you're trying to present to then really understand what it all means. Because it was a lot of content. I tried to simplify it, put it on one slide. So the story is, then we iterated that, and I went through the next time around, and I didn't have the data ready to share. Even though I did, I just said I didn't, and I said we'll have it ready by the time we have the meeting. And then when we had the meeting, I could walk them through it, and it had a very different meaning because I was able to present it. And so that delayed things, several weeks, maybe even a couple of months, because it was a change in mindset that I had to overcome.
Got it. Got it. So, and especially healthcare, right? Like, you generate massive amounts of data, and so how can hospitals and medical centers move just beyond collecting data to actually improve the patient outcomes? Like, how have you seen this data to be very effective in creating a better patient outcome?
There's no right answer to that. It's always constantly looking at different pieces of that.
Yeah.
So, and I've worked in rural hospitals, like where we're at with Upson Regional, to a 5 hospital system like Baptist Health, and to a 50+ hospital system like Baylor Scott and White. And each scale has different things. In terms of actually helping the patient engagement side, it really is about how do you get these patients to come back to your hospital, and their different needs. In a place like where we're at in the rural area, there's not much places people are going to go to, so the competition isn't that high. In a place like Dallas Fort Worth, where I live, there's competition is very high. How do you get people to come to your facility? So it really is highlighting that end user experience, and how do you get that end user experience to be as seamless as you can and engaged. So one of the challenges we have today is, how do you or I go see our doctor, right? What is the communication platform? They call it an omni-channel play, right? It's how many
Yeah.
different ways can you communicate? Text, email, phone call, right? Or mobile app, or whatever it is, right? There's so many ways. So you have to kind of make sure they're all kind of integrated and utilize that, and find a way that not only do you communicate, but then ensure that those processes are going to be followed up with. We run into challenges a lot of times. We put something together, but it's not being utilized.
Yeah.
So the solution is there, but the workflows behind the scenes isn't there. And in
Hmm.
healthcare, we know for sure, we're behind in technology, but it's because of the processes that we have.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, and definitely. I mean, there's a lot of complaints, there is a process, and also the nature of the work that the physicians or the healthcare workers are involved does not necessitate that technology be immediately adopted, right? So, being a technologist yourself and having spent so much time just in the healthcare, where do you see like a technology adoption should have happened but still has not happened in spite of efforts from leaders like you?
it's trying to stop doing the little things and the one-offs.
Okay.
And slowly we're getting there, and there are more comprehensive solutions. So today, most of the big EMRs or EHRs that are out there, the Epic, Cerners, Meditechs, um, they're trying to make sure that their system can do most of the functions. And that's the way that'll help streamline things, because if it's in one package instead of 10 different applications doing everything and, feeding it together through interfaces, the less complicated system you have, then it's going to help move us in that right direction quicker. Otherwise, it's just slower to adapt new technology. And then there are other things, in the security space. There are, some more comprehensive security solutions out there that can take care of 9 different point solutions, whether it's endpoint monitoring or email filtering or website filtering, all these different components that come into play from a security side. These are things that if you have one comprehensive solution, you can do something to help, then make changes as you go quicker. Revenue cycle management is another one. There's so many different ways you can do healthcare revenue cycle management. And it's broken out in like 15, 20 different components, and there's multiple vendors involved. But there's a move now toward end-to-end revenue cycle management, and so I think that is also another way that it'll let you move things quicker as you consolidate things. Kind of my philosophy right now is application rationalization by doing more with less.
That's a good way of looking at it. So, obviously, we can't escape today speaking about technologies like AI, or like the predictive analytics and all of it, right? So, how are you seeing AI coming to shape in your work, and what would be your approach to do the AI adoption in the healthcare industry?
So the big one from an AI standpoint right now is physician ambient documentation, right? So everybody's doing that, and that's going to be commodity in 5 years. So
Okay.
where, a physician just puts the phone down, says, I'm going to record this conversation, and then I don't have to document anything because the tool is going to do everything for me, and then I'll go back to my desk and it'll capture most of our conversation and be able to document that. So that if we can find more things that have that type of value, that's where it'll make an impact. Where I think, and I'm still learning about it, agentic AI, right? That's another piece that is driving things in a different way. So you have these agents that can be part of the different solutions that are already out there, but to help the humans navigate that decision making quicker. So not only by doing some of the analysis, but having actual recommendations, and in some cases, are they enough? If you trust it to go ahead and response, probably like some chatbots, right? And if you go to a website, there's chatbots out there, and some of that stuff is automatic. It's like it's got an agent that's actually operating depending on what you type in, and that's an agent running, right? And so I think, you know, all these other solutions are using some different forms of agents to help improve their workflows. And so that way the human decision is still required, but the human decision is more on the true thinking side and the more value added decisions that need to be made.
Got it. And personally, have you started in experimenting in any of these streams, or like, where have you actually tried to get your hands dirty in that way?
Yeah, I think the main thing we're implementing is an ambient physician documentation solution and trying to get our physicians on board with that. So we evaluated a few vendors. We were limited to in our organization who could work with our current EMR, but we have got 10 physicians that we're piloting it with right now, and that's helping us kind of migrate where we need to go. And so we'll continue to learn from that, and then we can always switch next year, but getting them on board is the first thing right now. And then I think on the revenue cycle piece, we're working with another vendor as well to help, really with that, claims, denials, pre-authorization, those pieces to help facilitate all of those components to go more efficient than how we operate things today.
Okay. So when you talk about like the claims denials, is it more from using AI to kind of predict, or or do you also envisage something like an agentic AI piece trying to kind of help as an assistant to monitor those claims, or help in analyzing those claims and denials? Is that what you are thinking, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is also, and it's unfortunate because, the payers are doing the same thing on the other side, right? So
Right.
they're going to use their agents and AI of some sort to also do denials better, right? So, we're using it on one side and they're using it on the other side. And
Yeah.
so it's just part of the business. But I think for us, it's not just, you know, what can and can't be denied and claimed, but then how do we turn it around
Right.
faster so that even sometimes it is what it is. We're not going to be able to change the outcome, but if we can at least get to the outcome faster, then we can, work on some the things that need to be the things that can give us the revenue that we want.
Right. Right. So, apart from AI, what other technologies are you most excited about, and that could actually be business impactful?
I think I mentioned earlier about the patient engagement platforms. I think right now there's a lot of one-off opportunities, and it just depends on which health system you're with, which
Okay.
hospital you're with. Everyone does it a little bit differently, and if there's any opportunity to do where it can become more centralized and getting standards put in place, there are it's narrowed down to only a handful of EMRs out there now, and they have their own internal network to share amongst hospitals within that also use the same EMRs. Eventually, hopefully, they will have a standard to having more sharing across those systems as well. Just kind of like how the banking industry, you can always transfer some information from one bank to another very quickly. Medical records are not quite that easy just because there's more data elements involved. But I think we're moving toward that, and that will hopefully help because the core function of what you need a medical visit for hopefully is still 70-80% the same thing. Now, then the rest depends on what actual care that you need, right? The procedure of care that you need is going to be different, or they call it episode of care.
Yeah.
So there's so many different types of episode of care that's needed. And
Yeah.
so that's where it gets very tricky. But even these episodes of care, a knee operation is a knee operation. Now there's variances on it, but if you get a knee replacement in Florida versus New York or California, hopefully you can do that, 95% the exact same way.
Hmm.
You know, that's where I don't think we have enough sharing of data and practices and workflows around.
Okay, good. Now, you have been on the SMU Cybersecurity Advisory Board. What are the biggest cybersecurity threats that face, you know, the healthcare organizations today, and how do you try to kind of mitigate them?
I think nobody has the right answer to that. I think it's, you hear the zero trust environment is what everybody's moving toward.
Yeah,
And so it's, you try to stop everything from coming in and then allow everything to be reviewed before you do it, but you can't catch everything. I think it will still ultimately be human error, right, that comes in. And so phishing, vishing is out there now where you have voicemail, people or impersonating, somebody on your help desk. And it may even sound like somebody right? So that's where it's going to get very tricky because they may be able to call and impersonate something that's happening. So
yeah,
that's probably the biggest risk in getting that imposter or bad actors into your environment. How do you prevent them? And that's a challenge right now. So, and then they're also going to be targeting, who are the key people who have access to everything. So it's the IT people are actually more at risk as well, because once somebody gets in, then they're going to try to capture the credentials for the technical people who have access to everything. So they have to also be due diligence of monitoring their accounts, their multi-factor authentication all the time.
got it. And tools like technologies like AI probably can be used on either side of the fence, right? Like, uh, the bad actors could use AI to kind of cause the security breach. At the same time, with the AI, you have the capability to kind of scale and catch and also predict that much more effectively. Is that what you also think, or like do you have a different viewpoint on that?
No, I mean, I don't know if I have a strong viewpoint. I don't have enough knowledge to really tell you. You're right, though. Both sides are going to have access to this information, right? So, yeah, I forgot what the term was. Um, but just like we have, Chat GPT for good stuff, there's, bad GPT out there too.
Hmm.
And, there's different terms out there, ransomware GPT or whatever it is. You're going to see it out there, and these firms are out there building it because they can make money off of this. So, it's tricky. Is the bottom line because what you can do is try to prevent things, but there are still, it starts with humans being able to always be a little paranoid. There's a person that I know, Drex DeFord, who manages the This Week Health Security community, and he always ends every episode with just be a little paranoid, right? I mean, and honestly, we should be more than a little paranoid. You should
Yeah,
always assume somebody's trying to steal your information, especially computer information.
got it. Yeah, and so today, how do you put, or like, how do you see the governance and the compliance while you have to kind of be on the innovation side? How do you balance this governance, compliance along with the innovation?
It That's going to be dependent on the organizations. Some organizations have more money, right? So they can have that innovation spend at a different level. But if you have that, you still
Yeah.
need to make sure that it is having the right level of security in place. And if at all possible, do the appropriate, we call it vendor assessments, right? Security IT assessments on every vendor. And there's a bunch of questions you can ask. But as you put together solutions that are exposing all kinds of information, then you want to do more due diligence on those security assessments, making sure that they are, protecting their environment. So just like what everybody saw through the Change Healthcare as well as CrowdStrike, things happen, but how much does the third party risk is what it really comes down to. And we're very high in that third party risk today. We just don't know where we're at in some cases.
So, shifting more towards understanding about your leadership and decision making, you have worked for the private equity firms and also the large care healthcare organizations. How do these environments differ when it comes to the IT strategy and the execution? Do you see a whole lot of difference, or like for you it's all the same?
I mean, there's definitely parts of it that's the same, but it's really driven on decision making and how quickly they want to move.
Okay.
PE-backed firms are generally operating with the model of looking at their EBITDA, the earnings before income tax and depreciation and amortization. They're looking at EBITDA and how that can be improved in 3 to 5 years, and
Yeah.
then basically hope for a buyout. I mean, that's their goal. So they're very driven on improving that profit margin, and so that what can be done now. They don't know. They might be taking risk on things that may have an impact 10 years from now. They're not
Hmm.
as concerned about that. Hospitals in general and healthcare systems, they're focused on OpEx because they're not making a lot of money as it is. So they're just trying to keep their operations streamlined in a different way. And capital is there to spend, but OpEx is what is very, very tight. And so you're just trying to improve those smaller bottom line margins. And it's just different. So the PE-backed firms are not going to be like buying out hospitals because the margins are so low and you can't change them that much. But it's in these other areas that, the solutions that are being put together, or sometimes the different healthcare private practice models that are out there that are being acquired. So they do operate very differently there.
Okay. And has your leadership style had to kind of change, or make amends to kind of adapt to these different environments, or like um, tell us more about your core leadership elements?
Yeah, it definitely has had to change. I think it depends on who. It's about setting those expectations. What's realistic of what you can do on each side of these things. And I went back to that from the beginning was about understanding the relationship because it's saying what do they want to achieve? What are their goals and objectives?
Okay.
Now, it really does come down to finance at the end of the day. I think it's always about money. We know that businesses are in business to make money.
Yeah.
So even if you're a not-for-profit, you're still trying to make money. So I actually look at our roles as CIOs or CXOs, whatever you want to call it. We're technology CFOs.
Hmm.
So that's what we need to always keep in mind that we're technology leaders, but we're also focused on the dollars.
Got it. No, I think that's the way of trying to kind of analyze, and that's really a good one. That I'm sure, like you had to make some very tough decisions as a CIO. How do you approach those high stakes decision making?
I think it's a little bit of what we talked about before. It's, collecting information, doing the analysis, making sure you can tell the right story to eventually make a decision.
Okay.
Some decisions require more thought. Some of them require separate conversations with separate leaders, and then collectively we can say, hey, I already talked to this person, I talked to this person, I talked to this person. Let's see if we all still, now what I talked individually, you can all agree collectively. Because some are larger decisions that require that type of effort, but you have to have individual conversations.
Okay. And I'm sure, like when you are, taking these initiatives, or you are part of these technology transformations, um, you are rallying behind a team, right? Like which is actually working with you to support the vision that you carry. So, how do you actually build high performance teams in technology area, and how do you actually operate with them?
I mean, getting high performance teams is a challenge. There's no doubt about that. Especially if you're like in where we were in a rural area, it's hard to find very talented people. But the biggest thing that I will always use as a mantra is doing professional development. If you set up your team for success with professional development, helping them grow, that's where the success comes. So if they grow, that's how I would grow, right? I mean, it's that simple. Like my success is going to be better if their success is going to be better. And that keeps them empowered. It keeps them wanting to be a part of the organization. Now, some may also grow so fast that they'll go somewhere else, but that's great. Then we're giving them the knowledge to continue to be better, and they're going to share that knowledge within our team before they hopefully leave. So I think it's all about empowerment and professional development. And that's where we do these conferences, educational sessions, webinars, even doing what we're doing today.
Right, right. So, and if you were to kind of design the hospital of the future, right, and what core technologies would be kind of non-negotiable for you?
I think for me, it's not having a data center. I think
Okay.
that's so it's kind of like an opposite of what the core technology. It's really, healthcare and hospitals. We're not in the business of data centers and managing data and servers, and that's not our. We have to hire people for that, but if we can truly, do that as a managed IT service, that's going to help in the long run to avoid uh, technology debt, right? Because we end up inheriting and having to deal with legacy debt a lot right now. So that's one thing. The second thing I think I would, focus on is, doing less customizations on whatever you're trying to do. Again,
Mm.
just thinking that if we're going to put something in place, what hospital is the hospital in a different state going to use it the same way?
Yeah.
Like, don't make it special. We always think we're special, and then next thing you know, we can't update it or upgrade it quickly because we've kind of customized it too much. So I would
Mm.
focus on less customizations.
Got it. And again, with any technology cycles or like in any industry, where there are technologies there are always that are overhyped, and there are few technologies that are underrated, right? So when it comes to healthcare, for you, from your assessment, what are those technologies at this point in time you feel they're overhyped, and technologies which are underrated, and where probably leaders are not leveraging to the extent they have to make it a success?
I mean, I can't tell you enough about what's truly overhyped. AI in general is overhyped. I think we all can agree to that. But
Yeah.
there are parts of AI that has a lot of value, right? So the question is, where do those pieces come into play? We talked about different areas where AI can be used with, agents and whatnot. So I don't really have a really good answer for that. But I do think some of those that are underrated might be the patient engagement platforms that are out there. There's some organizations that really know how to do that well, and others not are taking advantage of it yet. There's some good solutions out there, and then there's some not so good solutions out there. Um, I do think, again, going with that less is more approach, if the main EMR can have a good patient engagement platform, that's a better approach because then there's less integration, less, you know, it's quicker to market to make changes too because it's all within one integrated system. So I think patient engagement one is another one that I would focus
Okay. Sure. And you have said that reading is to the mind as exercise is to the body, right? Like, so what are the books that have profoundly shaped your approach to leadership and innovation?
on. So long time ago, it's probably been 15 years, a lot of our leadership was presented with several books to read. One of them was called Good to Great by Jim Collins, right?
Yeah.
And so that's
Hmm.
one that's it's an old one, but still very applicable, I think,
Right.
today. More recent one is Think Again by Adam Grant.
Right.
I've really enjoyed that one. And then another simpler one is just Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. Right,
Right.
so these are simple books. That one's a much more simple one. And the
Yeah.
last one that I actually would throw out there, it's not even a book, but it's audio. So This Week Health does a lot of podcasts specific in the healthcare IT space, and they interview other CIOs, they interview other leaders, doctors, security professionals. So I listen to those on my drive sometimes. There's one person I mentioned to him already, Drex, he does a 2 minute drill every week. So it's just 2 minutes, Monday mornings. That's my habit now. Like, hey, Kevin, let me see what he has to say for 2 minutes. So I
Hmm.
don't have to actually read it, I just listen to it. So those are the type of things that, and you just pick up a little bit, right? So every time you pick up some nuggets of information, you can share more, and hopefully that it becomes something you can use in your day-to-day practice.
Yeah. No, I understand that like you mentioned that like you read Good to Great long time ago, but is there something in that book that has stuck with you for a long time?
Yeah.
What part or like what core philosophy of that has stuck with you?
So the one that the analogy that everybody says is, it's the leader or the CEO is driving the bus, and you have to figure out, where you are in the bus,
Yeah,
what seat you're in, the right seat at the right time,
yeah,
and the bus will stop every now and then and come a fork in the road. You have the option to get off, or you have the option to be booted off. In some cases, sometimes you need to be politely moved off. So that analogy of you don't always have the right people on the bus and in the right seat. You have to move them around. But regardless, if you're in the seat in the back and you're not driving the bus, you have to follow the leader, right?
right.
So make sure you are in line with where the leader is driving towards. If not, step out.
Hmm. Yeah, makes sense. And in Think Again, like, how have you actually taken some of those principles and applied to your work life or your personal life?
I think the personal life is the more about willing to take risk, and I think stepping out of your comfort zone, right? So that makes you, as it says, think again. So it's
Yeah,
just too easy to stay in your comfort zone. And I'm not going way out of my comfort zone. I'm
yeah,
not going to tell you that I take a lot of risk, but I'm starting to take a little bit more and willing to do things. Even having a conversation like this. I don't think 10 years ago I would have been comfortable doing this, but I've kind of prepared myself to say, hey, these are things you can do. You just need to think about it differently, prepare yourself a little bit, and be willing to share in a different way.
awesome. Thank you. I know we spoke about like some of your setbacks or failure, but like is there one uh, failure or major setback that ended up being a defining moment in your career?
I don't know if there's any one particular thing. I think part of it had to do with when I stepped into a new role. I think I will say I did not recognize that being an imposter was okay.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is we step on into new roles and we take on a different function. And
Yeah,
I felt like I didn't know this area, so I didn't want to take charge of it. Like I
yeah,
would keep trying to either say somebody else should be doing that, or I was like, oh, the other department. Instead, just really saying, no, it's part of your responsibility, or it could be part of your responsibility. So taking on that new area and just learning what you can of it and make the best out of what you know doesn't mean you have to do everything, but taking that risk. I actually, ironically, heard a part of a podcast earlier today, and they were talking about some, different people how they hold themselves back. Particularly women don't give themselves enough credit. They said, hey, if you're going after a job or a role that has these 10 things that are on the list that you want to, that are requirements, men tend to say, well, I got 7 out of 10 of those things. I'm going to go for that role and not worry about the last 3. I'll figure it out.
yeah,
Women were, they wanted to be 9 or 10, right? They wanted to be perfect before they, and so they will not take that step. So their mindset is
yeah,
stronger to be perfect, which is really their, you know, golden strength in some sense. Okay, they have that. They're much better than men in most cases,
yeah.
but they hold themselves back because that risk is not there maybe. And so I think that's for me is what I learned is you don't have to know everything, but you can learn it as you go in some cases.
Agreed. Great point there. So when we look at your career, Nayan, like when at least it gives the impression that like it has organically evolved and you have thought about it going from one place to another. Um, but if you were to kind of take back yourself 3 decades ago and you want to kind of pass on one advice to your younger self, what would that be?
I already mentioned about taking more risk. I think that's the big thing, not being afraid to learn more things, but then use every minute in your spare time to do something. Like there's no such thing during the workday, you can be doing something extra, whether it's reading more articles, replying to posts, looking for that relationship building, connecting with people. And then for me, and I started doing this the last several years, is documenting things that I think are valuable. Right?
Hmm.
Like making quotes. Okay, this is something that I may or may not use, but I'm going to write it down. So I have a list of things that I think like, oh, that's good to know, and I
Yeah.
may or may not share it or share it with others or use it myself. But you know, that note taking, it's still hard to do. I still carry a physical paper and pen notebook whenever I can because it helps me remember things better. I think, and just it's a way to reference things.
Got it. Uh, so now, trying to kind of look ahead, what does success look for you in the next 5 years?
So several years ago, one mentor actually asked a similar type of question, and
Yeah.
really it was about, me wanting to make a difference, right? So I want to make a difference. And the way, he asked me was like, how many people do you want to influence?
Hmm.
So to me, it's if I'm able to influence 10,000 people, then that's my goal right now. Like to be able to say that from, you know, and I don't have an exact way to track that. Obviously, LinkedIn subscribers or whatever is a starting point, and that is something I've started. Right, I recently started a newsletter. So if I get that to a certain number,
Yeah.
then that's how I might be more effective. Because I'm helping influence people to make their organizations improve or become better, and in some cases, just make life better. That's how I'll value success. Is if I'm able to, being able to be around a situation where I know I'm influencing people in the right way. In terms of actual role, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. Like
Right.
it's just as long as I'm helping organizations improve in some fashion, and I think that's always my goal.
That's really awesome. I mean, very few people think of that. I mean, like, to stay away from, like, it doesn't matter about the titles that you hold or any of those things. It's about the lives that you are really impacting, right? When you are saying influencing, it's about like how many lives you have touched through your work, and like how have you made them feel and make progress in their own lives, right? And that's a great way of looking at it, and that gives you a perspective on like how you should see the growth for yourself.
Yeah.
Uh, that's really good. So I know, like, being a technologist yourself, I mean, I'm sure like you would always want to kind of go back, get your hands dirty, or play around technology pieces for your own selves. Like in the last 6 months or so, is there one skill or one technology that you have learned, um, that you were not aware of, or like you did not know before?
I think it's the ability to share knowledge, like being able to tell you what you know, what you think is good, and give advice. I mean, people like to talk. Not everybody does, but I've learned that I like to talk, so I need to harness what I like to talk in a more useful manner. Um, you know, my family might think I talk a lot of gibberish at times, and maybe I repeat myself, right? But I think I'm trying to make sure that there's some value in whatever I'm presenting. That because this is how I learned, right? They call it pay it forward. Like, okay, I learned something, so I need to keep sharing it. And so that is actually one of the reasons why I started my own little newsletter, right?
Hmm.
So, and I'll throw in my little shameless plug. I call it TGIF. This glass is full. So every couple of weeks, I'm going to try to put some comments around,
Yeah.
why I look at the glass as full because it's full of it's half water and half air, and
Hmm.
both you need to survive. You just don't see what is there, but there's always something there, and so that's the my little shameless plug of how I'll try to just share knowledge to improve things for myself as well as everybody else around me.
Got it. Yeah. And where do you actually? I know you mentioned like apart from the books, you also go to listen to a lot of podcasts, and especially in your industry and all of it. Apart from that, is there any other way you try to kind of acquire knowledge? Um,
I think
what
if
do you?
you can volunteer in any different ways, right? Volunteer in different professional organizations to even just charities, right?
Yeah.
So the more people you meet, the more you learn from. That's the reality of it. There is no one approach that's going to help you learn everything, but you end up finding what you like, what you don't like, and then you're going to navigate around people who think similarly to you too, or you will change with time. So that's, just being out there and being active is the best way.
Awesome. And if you have to leave one core message um, to the listeners of this podcast, what would that be?
I think just stay positive, right? Like there's always something to think about, but in a positive way. It's always not easy to focus on what's not going well, right? We always see what's not going well. It's kind of like any sporting analogy, right? Most people will remember their losses versus their wins,
Yeah.
okay? But it's like you got to kind of look at the wins and just remember if you won more than you lost, that's a good thing, right? So you're trying to figure out how that analogy is around making sure you focus on keep winning kind of thing and always improving.
Got it. Is there anything else perhaps that I have not been able to kind of ask you, or like you feel that like it's more relevant for the tech leaders of this generation to know that you would want to kind of share?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's this, you know, my age level and our generation thinks differently than the younger generation, and I think the younger generation also sometimes thinks things will happen sooner than later. I think their mindset has been trained that for a long time, right? Because of instant gratification and things are so instant, right? They're used to that communication being different than what we were. And I think the relationship building takes time. It's planting seeds, watering them, nurturing it, and eventually the fruit will come, right? So, but so you got to keep that going, and it's not easy to do. It's time consuming, just like everything else, but it's part of your job. And I would probably say I did it later in life than I probably could have. So I would just encourage people to keep working on that and just use that as part of your work life.
Awesome. Now you mentioned about your newsletter. Probably that's one way of for people to kind of get connected with you. So how can they get access to your newsletter? If you can share that, and what are other ways in which they can be in touch and learn more about the work that you are doing?
I mean, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, and the newsletters there usually right as one of my new things. So just subscribing to that is probably the easiest thing. And then if there's anything there that's interesting or comment worthy, comment on there. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to try to address things that will have value. Making sure that I actually have something substantial to say. If not, it's just more education for everybody. And I probably would learn if I don't know the answer.
Got it. Then it has been my pleasure to have you here and have this wonderful conversation. I learned quite a bit from this. Um, Thanks so much for doing this with me. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was a good practice for me too, and kind of learning what I do or don't know at to some degree too. So it's always
Yeah,
good, and I like doing these. Is what I've concluded.
sure. Thank you.
Well, thank you. All right, have a great day.
You too. Thank you.